budget. Before concluding my welcome remarks, I'll like to thank FCDO and Mr. Richard Ogg for supporting us in this endeavor. The study that Kashif conducted was supported by FCDO and also the food security dashboard, the Honorable Minister, that we are preparing, that also is partially supported by FCDO. So thanks, Richard, for your continued support to the food security sector and agriculture in Pakistan. Now, before we move further, and I request Kashif to briefly give his summary, I'll request Richard to say a few words as one of the co-hosts for today's webinar. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abid, and also Honourable Minister. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. You know, I won't say very much. I'll keep it brief, but you know, I think when you talk about ecosystem, ecosystems, it immediately brings up the key thing of food security, which is around diversity, and that in diversity we find resilience. And food prices are such an essential issue to everyone. It's so political, it's so human, it goes down to the very essence of what it is, of what it is to be human, the access to food. And I think it would be good, as you're also thinking about ecosystems and restoration of ecosystems, the diversity that comes through there and the resilience that comes through there, that we look at resilience through all angles. And I think with food pricing and monitoring of food pricing, you have the data you need in order to alert you to what potential challenges there are in the supply chains. But the more diversity you have in the sources of where the food products are coming from, the more resilience you can build into that. And I think that applies for Pakistan when you look in terms of your internal markets, your internal food supplies, be it within provinces and how they trade across within the country. But it also applies as you look for regional trade as well, and the potential opportunities for more resilience through that diversity of supplies, diversity of trade as well. So look, we've been we're very grateful to have been able to partner with SDPI and to support Pakistan in a number of areas, of which food price monitoring is one of them. It is really at the heart of everything, and I hope from having the right information available, it can help build in those more diverse supplies to build more resilience and ultimately cheaper, better food available, whatever happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard, for your very brief and crisp remarks. And now I'll request Kashif Majid Saleh. Kashif, if we can have a brief and crisp summary of your results so that we can give more time to Honorable Minister so that he can share his ideas, some of the government's initiatives. So I think I will be more interested to know about your policy recommendations. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for the introduction, and I will be very brief in presenting my study. If I'm able to share, but I still not able to share my screen.
Adnan, if you can make Kashif as a co-host so that he can share his screen, please.
Sir, please check now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab, and for the introduction. And I will be brief about our study, which we conducted for understanding the food security and COVID relationship and the need assessment for agriculture sector in Pakistan. There are actually four major reasons for this study: that to understand the crop production and food supply disruption during the mobility restrictions and the agriculture commodities which are susceptible to damage, and how much agriculture labor was affected and consumer behavior was changed during this COVID-19 restrictions, and how to respond to these vulnerabilities in terms of when when it comes to the government and institutional supports in the times of COVID. So I will leave the details of other impacts which I have.
Kashif, if you can go in a slideshow mode, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I will go to directly what we found the direct impact on agriculture and food system. On the supply side, actually, the restrictions which happened, which was restricted during the mid-March 2020 to mid-June. The impact on agriculture and on food system is huge. On the supply side, actually, this transportation restrictions give rise to the shortage of labor and farm machinery, increasing farm input prices and farmer limited access to the market. And the major crop groups that affected was the vegetables and fruits, and also the livestock, poultry, and dairy farms were also very much affected during the lockdown. And particularly their accessibility to the urban market, feed and vaccination of their stock, and the payment of the rents, utility bills are most challenging one. Another thing is that coupled with the COVID-19 restrictions, climate factors, the rainfall, high rainfall in Balochistan and in Sindh, and locust attack badly affected agriculture production, and that affected our food production. On the supply side, actually, that was more worse because most of the people reported that they have reduced food consumption up to 50%. And they have also lost in physical access to food, and they unable to buy food on credit, just like they do in the street shops, that they able to get the food. So they are denied to get the food on credit. So another thing, the contributing factor to this worsening situation is the loss of purchasing power due to unemployment, because most of the rural households are doing the agriculture work or daily wage laborers, so they are poor, and and also their statistics about them are unavailable, and their access to the government interventions are limited. Another factor that impact the food security is the loss of income diversification, because most of the internal migrants went back to their hometowns, and they lost their internal remittances. So government has, during this period, the restriction periods, government has announced a number of initiatives through a SARS program and cash grant programs and subsidies on seed and fertilizer. But the most important thing which help them to restore the economic activities and the livelihoods of the poor is the decision of the government of smart lockdowns, and that helped to resume the economic activities. For example, during the lockdown months, the poverty raised 53%, which was previously 48%. So in rural areas. But when the government intervened and through a SARS program and smart lockdown strategy, that poverty declines to 36%. So it's a success story for a government to intervene in a difficult time. So what lesson actually we learned is that beside the conventional micro determinants of food security, just like food production, consumption, crop yields, and income, there is some additional factors become highlighted during this COVID pandemic, which is very important to integrate in our planning process. The first one is about the dynamics of the farm labor market, because the Sindh, Balochistan, and KP is very much dependent on the mobility of migrants and labor migrants. So that during the restriction period, that mobility has restricted, and that farm activities are very much hampered because of this restriction. And the importance of cold storage, because particularly for the perishable commodities, it is very highlighted that the lack of storage actually disrupt the food supply chain, and also the importance of small-scale food processing and value addition for the milk process, for the vegetable, for tomatoes, and all these stuff, because most of farmers just buried their farm produce in the soil because there is no one to buy them. So the third one is the role of internal migrant or internal remittance in the family well-being. That is actually when most of the millions of people return back to the rural areas, they form their well-being become declined, and then they feel that and that internal remittances and their role in rural well-being will become very much highlighted, which need to be integrated in when we plan for the farm labor market and internal remittances. So second important lesson is the low SOPs compliance and awareness rural areas. Still, we have no such figures that how much COVID has spread in rural areas and how they are still lingering on the socioeconomic activities. And and still people in rural areas, when we visited them, they do not still recognize the threat of COVID-19, but when they feel when they're not able to make their produce to the market, and there is a large influx of migrant returnees, and that they face deaths of their relatives and neighbors, they start recognizing the threat of COVID. So my point is here that we need to include rural areas in our COVID-related, pandemic-related strategies. Third lesson, which is very important in terms of management, food security management, is the ability of public department, particularly in all provinces, and secure the food supply chain during the pandemic, which is particularly low. We find it very low. For example, the government departments lack data, information about how much food is produced and what are the consumption gaps, when and where food shortages may emerge, and who are most vulnerable in the society, and what are the specific food requirements to avoid hunger and malnutrition. So this specific type of information is lacking. Another important thing is that the most of food-related data collected and managed by the department concerns were based on the self-reported assessments of a few wholesalers and distributors in the city or in the urban areas or in the town. So and they base their assessment on their assessments. So there is need a comprehensive food stock position assessment for the whole market is lacking. And the last one is whatever the data is collected is scattered among different departments. So there need to be collected and for proper food supply chain management. So in terms of key recommendations, I think the first one, which is more relevant in terms that if COVID situation become more aggravated, there's need to be a risk assessment for local food supply chain. It is particularly important because every local area or a district is specialized in different food supply chains. So their risk assessment is also different. So what we found that the capacities of the local and provincial level food, agriculture, and public administration departments is lacking or limited. So there is need to be enhance their capacities and improve risk assessment for the local food supply chain, so that we can build a building block and we understand the key risks during the pandemic and disaster situations. Second important thing, which is also a part of the transformation program by the government, is the digital innovations for efficient food system and agriculture. But we found that during the COVID, two important factors. One is the agriculture advisory, and the middleman was missing from the food supply chain mechanism. So that affects the supply of perishable commodities and dairy and livestock products to reach to the urban markets. So that we recommend that we should look at the on-farm digital innovations, digital agriculture advisory, and off-farm digital connectivity to food traders and process. Another thing, which is, I think, is an old concept, but I think we can improve it a little bit, is a role of agro cooperatives, which may take up the role of middleman, or because that will help to increase the bargaining power of the farmers, and also help to better distribute the disbursement of the agricultural credits under different government initiatives. Another important thing is the role of cold storages. So we recommend that we need to develop a network of efficient, affordable, and accessible storage facilities for farmers and small traders that help them to sustain their businesses and secure the food supply chain. And lastly, the informal label registration and support program. What we found that there are millions of people actually migrate in different seasons to their adjacent districts, particularly to the Sindh, Balochistan, and KP, and secure their livelihoods. But during the COVID, they find it difficult to move. So if there is some type of registration or so that we can support them during the disaster or a pandemic situation like COVID. So these are the key recommendations. Sir, should I go for this slide also?
Thank you. I think now let's thank you, Kashif, for presenting the summary of your study. So some of the lessons I would say, and some of the recommendations that you mentioned are already being taken care of. Some perhaps we need to still focus on them. Some are partly addressed, especially your observations about the supply-demand gap, the prices, what is produced where. That is being partly addressed through the food security dashboard that STPI developed for Ministry of Food Security and Research. Of course, we still need to be to explore its fullest potential through better data collection. But now I'm extremely interested to learn from the Honorable Federal Minister Syed Fakhr Imam, who in itself, in his own right, is an institution, especially when it comes to agriculture and food security. A progressive farmer by passion, and of course, one of the respected politicians in Pakistan, right person for the right job, I would say. So, Honorable Minister will come to you, and would love to listen from some of the initiatives that your ministry is taking, and some of the recommendations that you have given for federal budget in order to address the areas that Kashif has highlighted. Over to you, sir.
First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude and that of Ministry to Mr. Abid Suleri, who's the Executive Director of SDPI, and the Honorable Mr. Richard Olga, and Kashif, who's given us his very sound analysis of how he's seen different elements of food security. I feel overall that the pandemic which hit the world early last year, and we in Pakistan officially recognized it about March, April last year and set up this NCOC, which commendably, I think, under the able leadership of Mr. Asad Umar and the other supporting people, especially those senior representatives from the armed forces and many other ministries of the government of Pakistan, with all the chief ministers and then chief ministers of Gilgit-Baltistan, AJK, used to be online. I used to attend their meetings extremely regularly in the first few months, but then due to my own some of the problems that arose, I had to then divert more time towards the things that we were directly responsible for. One of the elements which has not actually been mentioned, which hit us quite hard along with the pandemic, was locust. And now that that threat is not imminent, or not there in the next few weeks or months, because it started from the Horn of Africa and hit us, and actually at a time after nearly 27, 28 years, we were very ill-equipped at the start. But, and this is where I think a combination of three elements from our ministry, the National Food Security, they did a commendable job under the Department of Plant Protection. I think they surveyed, I forget the exact figure, but it was millions of acres of land. and then the amount which was treated with chemical. And as you know, it took a very divergent route this time. It came in from Iran, hit practically every district of Balochistan, about 8 to 9 districts of KP, the same number in Punjab, and little more in Sindh. But we were able to tackle it with, I think, a fair amount of efficiencies. But what it led to was that now we will have a very large component coming in from the World Bank. We've already recruited 100 technical people for any future such threat that we may have, entomologists and assistant entomologists and supporting staff for that very purpose. So I just wanted to mention that because that was a very major threat at one time. And we were very lucky we got away with the least or minimum damage, as they say. The other factor that has been talked of, the environmental threat, and the environment and climate change actually impacted us, in my opinion, the most in Sindh. Because after about 100 years, we've never had such rainfall, and we happened to be going to Thar just a couple of days before that very monumental rainfall precipitation that took place in Sindh, because it virtually destroyed 40 to 50% of Sindh's cotton crop. That has not really been mentioned enough within this context in the last year, because that is where we really lost out. A very huge, and our target there was 4.5 million bales, and ultimately Sindh didn't even produce 50% of that. So it did impact, and it gave us a great amount of food for thought, which actually impacted much of what needed to be done. But despite that, the COVID situation, as the roadblocks that came about, transportation, migration of labor, and there is specialized labor in some of these orchard fields. For instance, in the mango harvest, there are groups which go from Punjab into Sindh every year. And this has been going on for several decades. Sorry. And these specialized groups, which you call immigrant labor, Kashif called them that. That's correct. But along with that, I think the government took, as it already been mentioned, because vaccination was about a year after that when it started, to protect the people. But when we said social distancing and masks and having hands constantly cleaning them with soap and so on, these were there. But I think we were very, very fortunate that we have 3 waves in Pakistan, and we dealt with them in a very competent, by and large, competent way. And we so far have been, I say so far because India, as you know, went in March and decided to celebrate that they had conquered COVID, and you know what happened after that. So I think we need to keep our heads completely on a very serious note as far as COVID-19 is concerned, because the kind of fallout this has, not just in a country like Pakistan, but worldwide, globally, can have devastating effects. And I was reading an article in the London Economist, which said that COVID, although 3 million deaths have been ascertained and put on the record, according to them, when they worked out over a large field and they had created 2 or 3 models under which how many people were killed, the figure they came out was 10 million minimum dead. I don't know how they constructed that model. This was a huge kind of an assessment they did with several countries over a period of time. So statistics can be changed or can be modified or can be read in manners which are not always there. And this is where I would like to again express my gratitude to the SDPI's leadership and Abid Suleri Saab in particular about this dashboard. Because I think one of our failings, if I may use that word, one of our shortcomings in the national food security was that much of the time the pricing monitoring mechanisms were not always perhaps correctly read by some of us. in the sense that last year the procurement price was set at 1,400 per 40 kg for wheat. Within days, it was selling at 400-500 rupees higher than that in Karachi and Peshawar. Now, what was the change? The harvest had just started, and it was very strange because this actually didn't start then. It started 6 months early on the 16th of December 2019, where before that the prices were 1,300 officially, but they shot up to over 2,000 without any reason. Because in my opinion, some people who have always a little bit of extra money had hoarded it and unleashed it. And then they wanted to make a big amount. And then the Pakistan stocks at that time of wheat were abysmally low. Sindh had none because they had not procured any at that time. And Punjab had only procured 3 million. So the amount of stocks available with the state were less than should have been. And learning from that, last year we procured 6.6 million tons of wheat. The target was 8.2. Punjab was in the lead. They procured 4. 1.2 million each was procured by Pasco and Sindh. But despite that, having this large quantum of wheat with us in store, the prices kept on shooting up. The major reason being that international prices were much higher. And from day one, there was this strategic outlook that we had to import. We did import, but we started with the private sector, but private sector is there for profit. They're not there to keep the prices low, but soon the state realized and the government then immediately changed tack, and both the then state and the private sector imported. And then prices up to a time, and for the first time in Pakistan's history, on the 7th of July last year, the Punjab government, 17,500 tons from 7th July on, they were giving out at subsidized price of 1,475 rupees per 40 kg. It's unprecedented. It was never released before, but this was really to give access to those who could afford it. And then along with that, as was mentioned, came the SRS program, which went up to the tune of 170 billion rupees. This was a great initiative of Prime Minister Imran Khan, who constantly was monitoring many of the meetings himself on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, to see that accessibility or affordability was there with the poorer elements of our society, the ones who really suffer, which could be anywhere from 16 to 20%, those living below the poverty line, and many just living above that. So the thrust of the whole element was, and this is where the availability came into on a very large scale, but by and large, the availability of supply was never short. Whatever one says, yes, prices were different, and by and large, prices, this was an administrative measure, but as you know, the law of supply and demand is such. But in Pakistan, the shortages, if they were to come, were supposed to come in December on till March. However, we were never short because over a period of time, we had enough imports coming in, and in the last year up till April, we imported 3.6 million ton. 1.4 million came in through private sector, and about 2.2 million came in through the public sector. Saying all of that, and given the situation as it existed, and I think one can say that we were, in fact, in the ministry, because I had just joined the ministry last April or May, I got into my mind that why are we short? What are the reasons? And I came to the sort of my own rough assessment was that we need to go back to the basics, which was, why is production short? And other than minimum support price, which should have been a little higher in my opinion, instead of 1,400 at that time, that was one major factor. The other factor was the quality of seed. And when I asked our Federal Seed Certification Department that how much seed do we have? They told me that Pakistan's total requirement of seed is 1.1 million ton. I said, how much of that have you certified? Pre-basic, basic, certified. They said they had certified 513,000 1,000 tons. So we got the figures. We knew exactly where the seed was. We told, and it's basically the Punjab which does 97, 98% of the seed acquisition. So we knew exactly where the seed was, and that policy then November at the time of date of sowing. Unfortunately, we did not announce in my opinion, although our ministry said we should say 1750 at the start of the sowing period, the others didn't agree. Sindh made no comment. The others were a little lower, especially Punjab. However, 4 or 5 months down the road, when they realized that Sindh had gone at 2000, so in that sense, we then had to completely change the context. And in that sense, the Punjab then decided to come up to 1800. But as an agricultural economist, you would know that normally when you announce prices at the time of sowing, and that's what's done traditionally, even I think if we had announced it 1800, the fear was that it would again bring in greater inflation in the market immediately and affect those who cannot afford it. But if we had done that, in my opinion, maybe 0.5 to 0.8 million ton, perhaps additional. Despite that, Pakistan has been very lucky, and we have record production starting with wheat in our history, 27.3 million tons, 2 million tons more than last year. I think that's despite COVID. This is the real thing. Despite the supply chains being disrupted, despite all the other factors there, we have gone up by 2. And this, I think, is a very significant thing. People do not perhaps give it enough credit. We had 8.4 million tons rice production, another nearly 500,000 tons more than the year before. Similarly with maize, we had record production, nearly 8.4 million tons. And as you know, maize has doubled its production in the last 10 years because of the poultry industry. And then we also had record production of potato, record production of mung bean, and record production of onion. So 6 crops, 3 major, 3 minor, have historically had record production this year, despite COVID-19. And production and productivity per unit area, if we can take that up. Cotton was, of course, much lower than our target, and that was a major setback, as I said, because Sindh lost nearly half its time. But what our strategic effort in the future is going to be basically is livestock, which is 61% of Pakistan's agro sector, needs more focus. There are 3 elements to livestock. There's breeding, there's feeding, and then there are the health facilities. On the breeding side, the new plan is looking at it a little more aggressively. But we'll have to monitor that very closely and see how we actually manage it on the ground. Because it's easy to make policy, but to bring it on to the ground, track and tracing. On the seed, we have started this track and trace system. Now we'll have to do that across the board on most of the things we do. Pakistan suffers a great deal in our livestock industry because we have foot and mouth disease. There's only one area, Bahawalpur, where with Chinese assistance, we're looking at foot and mouth disease for its eradication or minimizing it. We have $400 million of meat export per annum. If we could eliminate foot and mouth disease as one factor, I think, and this can only be done if we have the proper vaccines. We only have 10% vaccine available locally for what we desired for about the 90 million big animals we have, buffaloes and cows. So these are the kind of areas that we will be looking at. There are some niche markets in this new budget which I would like to explore. We are short, heavily short of our edible oil production. We are because of the prices having gone sky high. We'll be importing edible oil to the tune of $4.5 billion. Sorghum, which has been done wonders in the United States of America, Brazil, China, and India. We have been experimenting for 30 years, but we've never taken it out to the field. We'll now take it out in the field on a limited scale. And this is one new initiative we are going to take. Organic farming, how to give access and partly subsidize to the farmers organic farming on a small scale, we would like to take up that initiative. And third, floriculture for export. Floriculture for export is done by our neighbor where they are earning billions of dollars. We haven't even started in that direction. This is one area which I've asked my scientists that why don't you, and we've put in some areas where we would like to do that. I'm using this platform on food security to the kind of thinking that is going on in our ministry at this time. And we want something to break through, because even though agriculture gives directly 19.3% of the GDP, indirectly it gives 19, and we occupy, I for one feel that given all the challenges of climate change, biodiversity, and all other challenges which go along with the supply side, the demand side, we in Pakistan need to build up institutional mechanisms for intervention by the state at the right time and with highly trained human resource. The human resource is the key to development, in my opinion. That's how the Chinese completely transformed their country. They brought in some of the best educated young people. They sent to all universities in North America and Europe. And on their return, they came and completely transformed their own country. I, for one, believe that quality education, higher education, science and education is the key for transforming agriculture and the rest of industry, service sector. High tech. Our neighbor is exporting high tech to the tune of 155 billion. We've just crossed the 1 billion mark. These are the areas we should tackle in terms of both digitalization, but we need to build up a large group of people, young people in particular, and set up our own Silicon Valleys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, not only for updating us about some of the initiatives that federal government and the ministry under your leadership has already taken, but also some of the proposed areas of intervention in the forthcoming budget, especially the edible oil and organic agriculture. I'm not sure how much time if you have got, but I just had two minor comments to make, and one was about the availability of accreditation labs to certify that the produce is organic. I think one of the major roadblock for us to export our organic produce is that we don't have any facility that could certify that our produce is organic. Second, on quality education, using your kind presence here, I just wanted to highlight the plight of Agriculture University Faisalabad, which is without a vice chancellor for last many years, and now it's without an acting vice chancellor. Even the pro vice chancellor, that gentleman got retired a few weeks ago. So with this sort of headless and uncertainty at our premier agriculture research and educational institutes, I think we are actually not going ahead. We are actually retreating from taking benefits from these institutes. So if you have any
I'm happy to hear that you have pinpointed something. Actually, the government of Punjab is in charge of the University of Faisalabad Agriculture, but I'll try and talk to the Honorable Chief Minister and find out what the reasons are. As far as the accreditation of the lab concerned on organic, we'll have to examine that and maybe set one up. Thank you so very much. I'll beg leave. I have to go to a meeting. So with these remarks, I really appreciate your webinar, and I hope we'll keep on doing it again and again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. With this, we'll continue with our presentation. Kashif, if you can again, first you presented the summary, so the component on ecosystem restoration, if you can run us through that component, please.
Okay, so
sorry, we had to intervene you because the minister had a meeting with the Prime Minister. So
no, it's fine, sir. Do you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. For ecological restoration and sustainable agriculture, actually, this is the key concerns right now in the context that we have lots of issues currently in terms of agriculture sustainability and also ecological restoration. In terms of agriculture sustainability, I think the major limiting factor in recent times or which will linger in the future and impact our agriculture and also the ecology is the land degradation and declining of soil fertility. You know, and our audience know that Pakistan is mostly an arid and semi-arid have climate, and so because of this aridity, the soil degradation and soil deforestation, the dry land increase in Pakistan over the time. So that dry landness has trigger soil declining in soil fertility, and that culminate into the loss of agriculture yields. Not only wheat, the cereal crops, but also other vegetables and fruit crops. So second important thing which hampers to the growth for agriculture is the quality and quantity of water. You know that both the quality in terms of saline water and the quantity in terms of variability due to the climate change and the competition among the different sectors. The quantity of water is also reduced for going to be reduced in future for agriculture, and it is essential that if we have to manage and if we have to adopt the sustainable agriculture, then the water is required for ecological restoration. So we need to revisit irrigation and drainage issues because of this there is a lot water logging and salinity problem in Pakistan, and again it affects land degradation and soil fertility. The next factor which is impacting our agriculture is the climate change. It both directly in terms of the impact on crop yields. It is projected that the number of crops, cereal crops, there is a decline in yield because of increasing temperature, because of erratic rainfalls and variation in monsoons. So there are other environmental issues because of climate change, which are actually indirectly affecting the agriculture because of the frequent invasion of pests and diseases, and also changes in water availability. So in terms of emissions, GHG emissions, the crop residue burning and land use change, cover change and livestock, actually the emissions of methane and carbon dioxide actually contributing in the climate change. And Pakistan, because is one of the largest livestock and dairy production, so the emissions, the methane emissions is high. So next is the excessive use of herbicide, pesticides, and fertilizers, because there's less training and less awareness about the appropriate measures, appropriate methods for application of these pesticides. There is excessive use is observed or practiced in Pakistan. Another important thing is the declining biological diversity, not in Punjab, but in Sindh and Balochistan and in KP, and the threat of locust outbreak, because it is actually the locust is gaining the areas, and it is reach up to the South Punjab and some areas of KP, and in central Punjab there is an attack from small hopper, which is from last 5 years. It is the attack is coming from Kashmir, and they destroy the rice flowering phase of for the central Punjab area, so that the invasion of this the species actually disturb the ecology and agriculture. So I like to recommend some of the initial recommendations for this. The first one is related to the changes in agroecological zoning, and you know, Dr. Abid, you are proposing from a time being that from years that we need to understand the changes in agroecological zones, and we need to define it. What changes in geophysical characteristics, in climate, in weather, in terms of cropping patterns, what type of agroecological zones has changed over time, and how it impacted the regional ecosystem, particularly in Sindh and Balochistan and in KP. So that need to be done. Actually, in recent days, there is effort from FAO to they developed the new agroecological zone for Punjab, but that need to be expanded for the whole Pakistan. Because that exercise was done in 30 years before 1980s. So that the initial step that we need to identify the threats and opportunities within the agroecology eco zones, and how we can improve our cropping patterns and we adjust our agronomic practices. The second important thing is that focus on climate smart agriculture and green growth. Rather than focusing on intensive and extensive agriculture, we need to be focusing on precision agriculture, precision methods for application of water, pesticide, and fertilizer, so we can incur less harm to the soil and water resources. So that need to be propagated and that need to be included in our transformation plan, which is currently undergoing or considering under the government. And the last thing which I like to mention is about the water management, water conservation and management. And we need to, because this region is arid region and or semi-arid region, and without irrigation, artificial irrigation, you cannot grow or get proper yield from the crops. So we need to modernize our irrigation network so that we can secure some water for our ecological restorations. So I will stop here. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Kashif, not only for providing us some of the snapshots of your field survey, informing us how COVID-19 it impacted demand and supply side of agriculture in different provinces of Pakistan. And also highlighting some of the ecosystem restoration requirements that are essential for ensuring our food security. If I can get 2 or 3 messages from your detailed presentation, I think the first message is that we are lucky that COVID-19 didn't impact our food supply chains. It didn't impact our cereal production. It did impact our fruit and vegetable yield, but mainly the perishable commodities, their supply and their storage, but not their horticultural or agronomic activities. But where it hit the most, it was the purchasing power, the socioeconomic access to food, the second pillar of food security, whereby due to massive layoffs and due to many people losing their livelihoods due to COVID-19, they saw their purchasing power getting eroded, and that's where the whole issue of food insecurity that actually started. Moreover, one of the impacts that one sees is the erosion of purchasing power, which increased inflation. So food inflation, which is in Pakistani context is quite seasonal. So we know that before every Eid, there are certain commodities, food commodities, whose prices go up or down. And there are certain seasons in which prices of tomatoes or onions or potatoes or other perishable commodities, they either go up or they come down. But this time one is also faced with the challenge of erosion in purchasing power, that is turning the pain of food inflation even severe. And on all these issues, we have our second speaker, Honorable Jamshed Iqbal Chima Sahab, who is Special Assistant to Prime Minister on Food Security. He's Minister of State. Due to technical reasons, he is not able to join us on Zoom link, but our team is linking with him through telephone. Adnan, is Mr. Chima online through telephone?
Sir, he's joining in 5 minutes.
He's joining in 5 minutes. Kashif, if by the time when he joins, if you like to add any other dimension of your study, and then of course we'll present the summary to Mr. Chima and we'll hear from him. You are mute, Kashif.
Yes, sir. Actually, I just explained that what the phenomena of the farm labor actually that affects the three provinces very hard, in a sense that because of the most of the migrant workers seasonally migrate from Punjab, and from Punjab up to the Ziyarat and whole Balochistan, and also in Sindh, and there is an internal movement in KP from for the peach farmers during the COVID, that the peach farmers unable to get the farm labor, and that impact their income and their supply of the peaches. So that's actually the phenomena that trigger my mind, that to understand the issues of in depth, that because the rural household which are landless and also non-farm household constitute about 65% of rural households, and most of the poor are also those people. So these are also people that migrated, and part of their family migrated to the labor markets in Sindh and Balochistan. So the idea is to understand their vulnerabilities, their socioeconomic pressures or impacts of their migrations, but also to register them at least at local or administrative level, so that there is some record for their mobility, and if in the times of crisis, just like in floods, just like in COVID, just like in heat waves, and whatever the extreme events happens, so we can identify and locate the people who are most vulnerable, and what type of issues and what type of what amount of financial resources they are required, what type of mobility facilities they are required, and national or international support they required. So that type of registration system is important for the smooth functioning of agriculture labor market. In Punjab, that labor market is quite stable and established, so that is not the major problem in Punjab. But of course, in other areas, that's an important issue. Another important issue is this supply of perishable commodities for dairy products and also the livestock. Particularly, which I already mentioned, that in KP, actually half of the poultry farms, which about 3,600 dairy farms in KP, half of them were closed because of the lack of financial resources to sustain their businesses, and that impact has still lingering on, and that's why we still have the high prices for the poultry. So I think these are some issues which need to be considered while considering transforming the agriculture plan, discussing the plans. I think so. These things are still my points.
Thank you, Kashif, and I'll just add, ladies and gentlemen, that according to World Bank's report on commodity pricing, the prices of food commodities, they are at 7 years high. So after nosediving during initial phase of COVID, the prices of food commodities, they started getting increasing due to the increased restriction, due to the vaccination rollout, and due to economic recovery in different countries. And just to give you some idea, for example, wheat prices internationally within last 1 year, those have increased by 21%. Similarly, edible oil prices, those have been.
Sir, Jamshed sahab online aa gaye.
Yes, thank you, Umar. With this, I'll welcome our chief guest for today's webinar, Mr. Jamshed Iqbal Chima, who is Special Assistant to Prime Minister on food security. Mr. Chima, we know that there are some technical issues, but on behalf of SGPI and on behalf of Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, Mr. Richard O, who is also online in this webinar, both of us welcome you. Before you joined, one of our researchers, Mr. Kashif Majid Salik, he was presenting his study findings that he did last year, trying to understand the impact of COVID on agriculture. And his major finding was that although COVID-19, fortunately, it didn't had any direct impact on our agronomic or horticultural aspects in our agriculture. It didn't have direct impact on our agriculture or food supply chains, but it did impact the storage of perishable commodities, fruit and vegetable. It did impact agriculture advisory services. It did impact the mobility of middlemen who at times are also the providers of seed and fertilizers. And it did impact purchasing power of millions who actually saw their purchasing power getting eroded, and that's why they are feeling the severity of brunt of food inflation. So these are some of the findings that Kashif found through his study. He also highlighted the importance of ecosystem restoration for sound agriculture management and for ensuring food security. And I know that you are doing a lot through your agriculture transformation plan. We would like to learn from you some of the salient features of agriculture transformation plan. And while you joined, there were certain questions, and I'm sure that you will be able to perhaps address them in your talk. And that was about some of the concerns on privatization or involving private sector for agriculture advisory services. So I hope you would also be able to clarify some of the misunderstandings which are going around on this particular aspect, the public-private partnership for agriculture. So over to you, Honorable Minister.
First of all, I would like to clarify the discussion about privatization of the no one is going to privatize the extension department in Punjab since anything from the country. We are looking at of provide services in jobs, orders, and the like. So this system will be managed by the private sector and paid by the government. Basically, we are going to transform, we are going to whole country than the old agriculture, which was considered as we need to fulfill fulfill our requirement of food, feed, and being not so big agriculture and having not so big piece of land, we just there with the food. I mean, illegal. Because in bigger economies, bigger agriculture economies, they are also fulfilling some partial requirement of illegal fuel from agriculture, from maize, you can say sugar cane. Our focus is to fulfill the requirement of food, feed, and fiber from our own agriculture, and we are confident that we can do it from 55 million acres. Right now, available for agriculture. From this cluster, which is around 105 million acres, main feature starts agriculture. Main competition starts from the harvesting of water, saving of water. So, long from Prime Minister and recommendation from the government that we are making 10 years. We were celebrating it as a decade of camps. Actually, we want to make big canals. One is from the Jhelum and South. For Jhelum and second, we are extending in big way to the bringing new land cultivation in Pakistan, which is a virgin area right now, and giving very good yield for cotton, which is our main crop, main cash crop. So actually, we are after getting to this and definitely utilization of water. The second thing is the main feature is we are going to revamp, restructure our research system, provinces as well as we are going to strengthen our research system by inducting some scientists in China. Why are we bringing scientists from China? Because they are willing to come over here. They are willing to work over here. Secondly, they have got the biggest world agriculture. So this is the biggest number of people who were number one is China, number two is Brazil. So the biggest goes to the Ocean Blue and the school Ocean Blue. These are two heroes of maximum people. So the main growth, food, vegetable as well as in grains. The main growth seen in previous years, previous 20 years in China. So if we talk about the biggest story, which we can sell, which we can project, which we can follow, that is so one has work with people in they can work over here. So we want to strengthen our research system by increasing Chinese. We are going to hire anybody. We are going to analyze this research system. We just want to strengthen it. shift our focus from previously our focus was crop. Nobody was thinking about main pillar of our grain will be this maize, because maize provide us help us in three categories. I mean the food, feed, and industrial, like start picking. So it helps us three segments: food, feed, and this you can say industrial raw material. So right now, if we look at our livestock and poultry, which are very promising fields, so in these segments we need 40 million ton feed now, if we see the number. But we are producing 12 million ton this feed. I mean, we are not only hungry, but our animals are also hungry. They are also undernourished. So this maize will be a strategic crop in the future. We want to grow it at more areas and increase its production immediately 3 times. And our second strategic crop will be definitely wheat, because we are wheat-loving people, and it's a staple food, and its use is increasing every year around 6 million ton, 600,000 tons. So this will be our second focus. Third focus will be this, you can say, cotton, because value addition comes through this. So we're shifting our, we're trying to bring new areas under this cotton. In Balochistan, as well as the areas near this Cholistan and Thar deserts. Because cotton, if it's in the long track, in bigger tracks, it's very more successful. If it's in between the other crops, I mean rice, maize, sugarcane, chances of its success are less. If it's part of multi-cropping areas and in between other crops, where humidity is more, dryness is not there, this ventilation system, we call it as Dakhan. If Dakhan air is not there, and this more, you can say, moisture is there in the air, humidity is more in the air, then it's a very suitable, you can say, climate for the this, you can say, sucking pest as well as this bollworms. So it's very difficult to save your cotton from this pest if it's part of the it's in between other crops. So we want to make it develop its bigger track near this desert, as well as Cholistan and Thar and in Balochistan. So we are hopeful this year. I can give you the news that last year our crop was around 5 to 6 million bales, but this year we are hopeful. We are confident that we will be able to grow 10 million bales. So we are working on very smartly. We are working on this very smartly and trying our level best to save it from this abiotic stress and biotic stress both. And third one is you can say our future crops. Future crops definitely we will have to go for this soybean. And this in rice we will have to grow more hybrid rice. OP rice will maybe go down because of less yield. We are also trying to grow basmati, to develop basmati and hybrids, which give more yield and mature earlier. Because the basic pillar of this transformation plan is to grow the to increase the intensity of cropping. Right now, intensity of cropping in Pakistan is around 1.5. We want to grow it 1.25 crops per year. So if we want to grow more crops, then we will have to go for, you can say, short duration crops. In short duration crops, we can go for soybean, we can go for hybrid rice, we can go for maize, we can go for this mustard with maize. So we can go for potato. So these crops will get more acreage. You can say, and secondly, our main imports in the food is edible oil as well as pulses. So to substitute, to replace the import of pulses and this edible oil, we want to use as a catch crop to mustard as well as this pulses. In between the wheat and wheat, maize, and pulses are this rice, mustard, and maize. So by this way, we are hopeful we will grow. Right now, we are growing 44 million ton of the grain, which we want to grow it within 7 years, go beyond 80 million tons of the grains to feed our nation as well as to feed our animals and to produce raw material for our own, you can say, this industry. Secondly, the biggest gain we can achieve it's from fruits and vegetables. From fruits and vegetables, we will have this. You can say right now its yield is its total production is around 13 to 14 million tons, which we want to grow up to 70 million tons. 5 times we want to grow it because in the economies in the nations where this number of people is more and acreage is less, they have different design of agriculture. The countries having big tract of the land like America, this USA, this Brazil, Argentina, Ukraine, Russia, this Australia, New Zealand, countries like that, they have different design. And countries like China, Australia, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, India, these countries have different design. But unfortunately, right now, we have design like America, we have design like Argentina and Brazil, which have big land, even having a very small land. Our design is like countries having bigger chunk of land, bigger piece of land per capita. So we are going to change the design of our agriculture. Basically, what I was saying, it's paradigm shift. Paradigm shift is to change the design of agriculture. I mean, fruits and vegetables will be focus. It will be pivotal of our future. This you can say is strategic. The large second is other than the crops. Other than the crops, we're increasing our focus on livestock. Right now, our livestock is perhaps it's the most inefficient system in the world. Our cow is giving 1,100 liters milk per lactation, which is dismal, which is maybe the least efficient system, the most inefficient system. So we have right now buffalo plus this cow. We have 90 million animals. These 90 million animals are not adding as much as they can. So our target, Prime Minister's vision, is to transform this livestock sector by producing high yielding animals. So we will have the biggest genetic improvement plan. Genetic improvement strategy for next 3 years. We have a crash program to train 10,000 inseminators in the villages, 3 in every union council in the whole country. So these inseminators will be provided with high quality semen. Maybe imported as well as this local high quality quality semen, which have more capacity, which have the capacity to give more milk around F1. We are hopeful. The parents of these animals are giving, the mother of this bull will be producing around 11,000 liters in lactation, but its F1 will be able to produce around 5,000 liters. So if we grow this quantity of milk from 1,100 liter to 5,000 liters, it will be a wide revolution in this country. They will start, they will be able to get profit and self-sustaining this agriculture at their farm end. So this will change, this will be the biggest program for poverty elimination in the villages, as well as this big quantum jump of production, milk production, and earning at their level. Secondly, our focus is to provide cheaper milk, economical milk to our user. Right now, our producer as well as user as well as economy, all three are victim of the system. This producer is not getting money, user is getting expensive milk and impure milk, and economy is not getting profit. So all three are victim of this inefficient system. So we are going to benefit all three. In this regard, we are also putting together this industry as well as this milk collector, milk processor. So we want to export our cheese. So we believe we have some studies in which you can say suggest that there is a $25 billion export potential of this country in milk. And I believe it because we have a culture for raising animals. We love animals. We have perhaps after India, the largest number of animals at our homes or at our dairies. So the most cattle-loving nation is living in Pakistan. We are the most cattle-loving nation. So if we could convert it to the efficient animals, so it will be a wide revolution. We're going to do that. And last, not the last, but the second last is we are going for the drive of this fruit trees growing in the Bandobasti area or in the crops area. And previously we grow some forest plants in the deserts, in the hills, at marginal lands. But now in the areas of crops, in thickly populated areas, people don't grow plants like picker and dali and this forest trees. They can only grow fruit trees. We can only motivate them by growing their fruit trees. So we want to grow fruit trees alongside the roads, this pathways, canals, motorways, roadsides, and this dairas, village houses. So big drive. We want to launch a big drive of fruit trees in the agriculture areas. And for this, we are going to develop these nurseries and the universities, upscale the nurseries and the universities, and engage the youth for producing certified nurseries. One more thing, which was a very ignored area, was the medicinal plants. These are called superfood in the world. Medicinal plants and superfood, it's an industry of $57 billion right now, but very soon it will go above $1,000 billion industry. So these are high quality foods. These are the medicines. These can help to improve the health of the people. So hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
जी बिल्कुल.
Plants, we are also engaging some people from the private sector, as well as we have this medicinal plant scientists on one table. So we're going upscale. These plants, because right now our import is increasing very quickly. I mentioned I will give you an example there about this ginger, this isbol, this you can say this elaichi, this tea, like this avocado, and there's some plants, this fruit, dry fruits, pistachio, almond. So these are many billions of rupees import right now we're doing. Green tea, coffee plants. So we are going to grow all these plants over here and upscaling their production. So we are engaging nursery producers, our own scientists, then upscaling the nursery, then farmers, and then bringing the industry in it. So first of all, we will replace the import, then we will go for export after food processing. So it's not right now. Maybe some people can say it's a small portion, but it's going to be very big. So elaichi, this other spices, we're all going to grow here. So this is also part of the Prime Minister's, you can say, this transformation plan. Next thing is our mechanization. Next thing is to give this loans to the farmers. We're going to do it around 2 times in the next 3-4 years. Then is food processing. We want to take the food processing at you can say this every adda. There are clusters. There are some clusters of this. So there are some clusters of fruits and vegetables. There are everywhere, wherever is a cluster, we will grow. You can say have food processing over there. So we want to provide because right now 30 to 40% perishable are just wastage, and price fluctuation is too much. So to minimize, to finish this price fluctuation, to maintain the price at a certain level, we want to provide machinery to the youth from the Kamyab Naujawan program to provide basic food processing at every adda. So what we want basically to increase the commercial activity at adda level, then add the value, then we also want to stop the people from migrating from village to the cities. We believe if our people we could not provide jobs over there or some commercial activity, if our people start moving to the cities, then the population and the quantum of population we have in the villages, if they shift to the cities, the cities will burst up. So to maintain them, to retain them in the villages, we are going to provide them the commercial activity over there. So these are the basic ideas. These are the basic pillars of the Prime Minister's transformation plan in agriculture. It's a very comprehensive plan. We were going in a big way for promising crops, and our target is to increase 2.5 times income of the farmers. Secondly, we will match the international level of this calories per capita in Pakistan. Thirdly, we want to fulfill the requirement of this industry for raw material in our country, and not only we're not only going for this self-reliance. We will go only for self-reliance in 3 crops like pulses, edible oil, and this meat. In all other crops, we will go for this export, inshallah. So Prime Minister's 7-year plan is to make this nation as a net exporter of food, not the importer. Right now, very quickly, we are going to we are coming to becoming a net food exporter. So in future, we're converting this. We're changing this nation from net food exporter importer to the food exporter, inshallah. So these are the things. So right now, you can ask some questions.
Thank you very much, Jamshed Chima Sahab, for explaining agriculture transformation plan at greater length. There are a couple of questions on my chat box. They mainly pertain to agriculture statistics, the cropping zone policy, and accreditation facilities for organic crops. Is there any plan to improve this agriculture statistics and use of data for agriculture planning? Is there any plan to restore crop zoning, to enforce it in letter and spirit, and how to get this organic produce certified so that Pakistan can benefit through exporting organic products?
Actually, Prime Minister has built this dashboard of the food dashboard. So food dashboard, in food dashboard, we are receiving information from the provinces and even from the districts, movement of the food, its inventory, its movement, its import and its export. So there, previously it was more around, it was revolving more around the major food, I mean this wheat and some other staple food. But now we are expanding it to the all, I mean, movement of the animals, milk, this meat, this fruit, vegetable, sugar, and everything. So this dashboard, we are continuously watching, consistently watching this dashboard for two purposes. One is not to get any surprise regarding this price fluctuation. Its second purpose is to make a plan to get some to get the information and plan our future strategy, future agriculture strategy. Sometimes some crops, some plants, some you can say item does not get your attention, but they are getting weight. They are getting weight in your economy. Their import is increasing. Sometimes some out of attention plants are getting items are getting more growth in this export. So seeing those plants, you can have a plan in your own agriculture system to grow more, or to focus more, or to improve their genetic material, or their genetics, or their you can say bring into the system regarding their value addition or processing. So we believe this agriculture food dashboard will help us more than the even it was maybe previously or earlier it was planned. So it will help us more. So now I am saying this food dashboard and our Ministry of this planning and this economics. They are also developing and improving. They have developed, but now they are improving it. So we are hopeful they will help us very quickly to make it perfect for future planning. Secondly, you're talking about just organic food. In organic food, definitely it's a new phenomenon in this world. In this new phenomena, it has a lot of potential, and you can get when people are getting rich in our surrounding. Maybe if you see this nations, Japan, this South Korea, and China, and many countries are getting very rich. In Asia, there are many countries now which are getting rich. So there is a great potential for this organic food. So for this certification, when you pointed out this accreditation of this certification of this organic food, it's on focus now. So right from today, we will make a plan. We will make a modus operandi how to certify it, give the lessons to the people for this organic, do in nature, do in this production system, organic. So thank you very much for this mentioning this organic food. In future, it will be in our focus.
Thank you, Chima Sahab, especially for appreciating the food security dashboard, and it's a great player for us from STPI and the colleague who is sitting from FCDO, who partially supported STPI in developing this food security dashboard that government of Pakistan is planning to make the most use of this tool. Of course, our humble contribution can only be to provide you a prototype, and then the government can expand it and make the best use of it. Towards this and also this your remarks about organic agriculture, its certification facilities, these are music to ears. One has been advocating about such accreditation facility for decades, but we were never able to establish any in Pakistan, any single institute or any single laboratory that could certify our organic produce as organic. And of course, if that can be done, that would be again a game changer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for this technical glitches, but the message that Mr. Chima gave, he gave an overview of agriculture transformation plan that starts with the improvement in seed varieties, improvement in livestock breeding through insemination, that talks of mechanization, farm mechanization, where possible going beyond tractors, use of other equipments for making our agriculture efficient. That talks about having some storage facilities at local level so that farmers, they can store their produce at those stores, and that would help them to get exploited from the middlemen or artis. He also mentioned use of technology for agriculture advisory services. And in the beginning, he clarified that when he says about privatizing some of the agriculture advisory services, it doesn't mean that it would be sourced out. It would simply mean that certain third parties, they would be providing agriculture advisors, extension workers to the government, so that those then can go to the farms and field and serve the farmers in a better manner. Richard Og is here. He's a senior economist at FCDO, the former DFID DFID, based in British High Commission in Islamabad. Richard, your remarks on Honorable Jamshed Chima's presentation, and then of course I'll thank all the guests and we'll conclude. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for the wonderful presentations today. It was wonderful to hear from both the ministers and also to see Kashif's wonderful presentation as well. Two thoughts really about what could support the government's ambition and drive forward in agricultural transformation. And I'll use the sort of ecosystems analogy because it seems very apt for all of this. The first one was mentioned in Kashif's presentation earlier, and that's about how digital innovation can support the ambitions and drive of the Pakistan government. And I've worked previously in Nigeria, and there's some fantastic examples there where the private digital innovation is really thriving because of the very poor conditions in the country in terms of the infrastructure, the support to farmers. And instead, you've got this wonderful suite of companies that are trying to find workarounds to some of the traditional problems that farmers face. I went up to northern Nigeria and met with the chairperson of the of the Tractor Owner Association of Nigeria. And he looked very traditional. He was very, he looked like your typical traditional farmer. And he was telling me about how they were renting out their tractors to farmers. And so I just, very sort of, I just asked him, well, how do you rent them out? How do you know who needs them? What's your system for it? And he whips out his tablet computer and he shows me this interface, which looks like Uber. And it was the Uber for tractors, and it was matching demand from farmers to have tractors delivered to them for a short period of time at affordable amounts. And you have all these innovations that start coming in. We mentioned earlier about the challenge of the cold chain and getting cold storage for crops. Well, in Nigeria, there were containers with solar panels on top where people could rent out space in these containers to keep their produce refrigerated and then to get them to market. And these could be easily deployed wherever they were needed in the country based on when crops were being produced and demand. And finally, peer-to-peer financing, using these wonderful things where I can be a city dweller with no knowledge of farming, and then there can be investment opportunities for me to be able to invest in a poultry farm or a wheat farm or whatever, and I can provide capital, and then agricultural extension workers will come in and they will provide the inputs to help that farmer, and then there can be a return on that money which goes to me, goes to the farmer, and all the rest of it. So you can mobilize capital in a way like never before, based on matching smallholder farmers with small investors, and wonderful, wonderful innovation that can come from this ecosystem. So there's a question for me about how we can support that digital innovation, that ecosystem to thrive more in Pakistan as well, to support the government in its objectives of boosting productivity. And I think there's lots of opportunities there. I'm sure there's some very good innovative companies in Pakistan, but the question is how does the Pakistan government, how do donors, how do organizations and think tanks like STPI do more to support those ecosystems to flourish? The second observation really, which was also mentioned in Kashif's presentation, was around climate smart agriculture and looking at the sort of ecosystems around how we make what is produced more climate smart, more resilient for the future. I was watching a wonderful film over the weekend about how in Saudi Arabia, they had been able to bring land back, desert land. They've been able to make it back into productive land again through very smart water resource management by trying to slow the runoff from the hills, by trying to stop overgrazing and all the rest of it. And if you ever want something that gives you faith in the future of this planet, you see something like that, see a picture beforehand of land which is desert, and then see the picture after 5 years or so, after some very smart, relatively low tech, this is traditional kind of methods that come in and they rejuvenate that land, and you see communities that were around there making their livelihoods on the back of this. And I'd be fascinated to know whether there are such initiatives within Pakistan, and if there are, whether there are opportunities to scale that kind of thing up for the future, because that diversity, that natural regeneration really is sort of what builds in not just the immediate, satisfying the immediate needs, but also make sure that generations to come, there is a vibrant agricultural sector in Pakistan. So really enjoyed hearing from everyone today, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Richard, and especially for highlighting the two very practical examples from Nigeria. I'm thrilled about this idea of Uber tractor. I think that can go for all other agriculture equipments and agriculture implements that are required by small farmers. So as we don't have agriculture cooperatives or farmer cooperatives in Pakistan, but I think that this sort of innovation that can certainly fill in some of the void and gap that is there due to the absence of those cooperatives, and also providing this example from Saudi Arabia. I'm one of, or rather the only private member of Prime Minister's this coordination committee on agriculture transformation, and I'll certainly, with the help of Mr. Chima, would try to seek Prime Minister's attention towards these low-cost, high-tech solutions for our agriculture. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of STPI, on behalf of FCDO, we thank you very much for joining us today. Both the ministers, they gave their vision. One thing that is very much there and that I can get from their presentations or their speeches, that is Pakistan's renewed focus towards agriculture. So agriculture for decades had been neglected, neither private investment nor public investment, and it was left to the farmers and to the tillers to invest in agriculture. But one thing that COVID-19 that is one of the silver lining that now governments, they have shifted their focus from many other sectors back to social sector development, back to strengthening public health infrastructure, and back to agriculture, because food security that depends on agriculture. My punchline for today that we have to take care of our ecosystem because if COVID-19 back in 2020 was a black swan, this ecosystem degradation, it's a gray rhino that is running towards us, and we have to actually not only protect ourselves, but also to protect our future generation from ecosystem degradation if we really want to have food security in Pakistan and in planet. So with these words, I'll thank you all. And Richard, special thanks to FCDO once again for supporting this food security dashboard. And as you heard from Minister, that the Prime Minister actually wants to upscale it and to include more features in it. And I think that is again one of the silver lining that we non-governmental sector and the development partners, we can provide prototypes to government, and then it's up to government to scale it up and to implement it. Thank you very much all for joining, and we'll be uploading the recording of this webinar with the transcription on Minister Jamshed Chima's lecture, because the voice was not very clear. So we'll transcript it with subtitle. We'll upload it for your benefit. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr.